All right. Good evening once again, everyone. So, like I've notified us via the WhatsApp group, we're supposed to conclude the the topic we started last time, which is Microsoft Excel lookup functions, and we have only covered the VLOOKUP. So we are still having HLOOKUP and XLOOKUP. So the reason why I shifted it, I consider the fact that supposed to have informed us to upgrade our Microsoft Office to at least 2020 and above. So anybody running Microsoft Excel below 2020 will not be able to access XLOOKUP, but you can access HLOOKUP. So I wanted uh, a situation where I can actually cover both. But since I know that I did not inform us ahead, some persons may not be able to practice. So that is why I suspended that topic. So please, before our next meeting next week, uh, I'm encouraging us to upgrade our Microsoft Office to at least 2020, just to be able to access the XLOOKUP. All right, so let's quickly look at the topic uh, for this section. So this section, we are looking at one of the most powerful statistical function as far as Excel is concerned without VBA. This is one of the highest statistical function, which is called pivot table. Pivot table. So that is our focus tonight. Pivot table. So what is pivot table? So pivot table in Excel is a powerful tool used to summarize, analyze, exploit, and present large amounts of data in a simplified and interactive way. So if you look at those words that I bolded, summarize, analyze, exploit, and present large amounts of data in a simplified and interactive way, as explained it all. You know, if somebody give you, let's say, few values to sum up, let's say 100, 20, 50, you might not really need pivot table for that. Somebody give you up to like 1 million records, and you are asked, or a data set that constitutes up to 1 million record or entries. Let's say the total price, the total profit that we have in that Amazon data. And you are asked to summarize all the values under a numerical column. That is going to be very, very difficult. So pivot table has a lot of functions built within it that can help us to perform several statistical analysis that also falls under aggregation of value. Aggregation of value. So it's a very powerful tool, like I've highlighted, that you must know. As a matter of fact, if your objective for learning this program, Advanced Excel, is for business, for analyzing business data, this is one of the tools that you must know. In fact, you may not need some of those functions that we have dealt with in the past, like auto sum if, average if, all of those are functions. Their role can be played with the pivot table. But that does not mean that we can discard totally their essence. There are some in-between analysis that the pivot table cannot handle that will force you to go back to those techniques. So that is the definition of pivot table. So I just want to quickly run through the theoretical aspect so that once I focus on the data, I will not have to be coming back to my slide. So let's quickly look at another way we can define it. So here I'm trying to define it in more practical way. So what is pivot table? A pivot table allow you or allows a data analyst to, number one, automatically sort and count data. Two, organize data by categories. We are going to see how all this will play out. Calculate totals, average, percentage, and etc. Quickly answer questions. So we can use pivot table to quickly answer questions within our data sets without even writing any manual function. That is one of the beauty of this particular function or tool in Excel. From the beginning to the end, we are not going to write a single function manually. And the outcome we are going to derive, even if you are the most expert in terms of writing functions in Excel, you will not be able to get the solution this particular tool will provide us within a short period of time. So here I'm only trying to highlight some of the quick questions you can answer with the pivot table. So let's say in this case, let's say we are relating it with as a particular data set we are going to work with. Like, okay, let me say relate it with the one we have been working with, that Amazon data. Supposing you are asked to summarize the total profits generated from all the region, all the item type, pivot table can easily answer those kind of questions, right? So let's quickly discuss some of the components of a pivot table. So there is no way you work with pivot table without understanding what these terms are. The first one is rows. What are rows? Rows are data to group by row. In other words, what we are saying here is that pivot table can group data, can give us group analysis per row. That is, it can add value in group of words or selected row. The column, it can also group value across the top depending on the column attributes. So I just mentioned, let's say we have a column that is labeled year, we have a column that is labeled month. So I'm just giving random examples. So by the time I relate it with the data sets we shall be working with, is going to be very clear to us. Then we need to also understand how it works with values. And we need to know that pivot table has a very powerful filter function, advanced one for that matter, which is different from the basic Excel filter command. All right, so now that we are familiar with that, let's look at some of the benefits why you should choose pivot table to analyze particularly business data. One, easy to use, no formula needed. Like I've said before, we don't need formula. It saves time on manual summaries. So instead of you punching your calculator just because you want to sum up values in a column, with pivot table that can be done swiftly. Then it allow us to filter. It allow us to filter. It allow to sort our reports. It allow us to read through the data. All of this, you are going to see us applying them practically. So I just want us to know all this first before we go into the application of the pivot table. It supports multiple calculations. I've mentioned that before. So it's a kind of a single function that comes with so many sub-functions depending on the analysis question you are asking. So if the question have to do with counting of values, then you switch to the count function. If the question have to do with summing of value, then you use the summation. If it has to do with average, then you use the average. There are so many other functions there, but I just mentioned these few ones as some of the most used functions. All right, so now that we understand what pivot table is, let's quickly go to our data sets. So I'm looking at relating it with a different data set. So I'm going to be working with two different data sets. I'm still going to work with the Amazon data, and then I want to start with this particular data. So as our custom as data analyst, when you are given data for the very first time, we are supposed to spend few minutes to understand the data. Like I've told us before now, understanding the data will help you to draft effective questions that will lead to deriving effective insights. Okay, so it's very important. So I will just spend like 2 minutes to walk us through the data set. So this is actually a salary payroll data set that comprises the following features. Serial number, they are all unique value. We have the employee's name, we have the employee's ID, we have the states, we have the sex, we have the departments, so we have different departments. We also have status. If an employee is not single, the employee should be what? Married. And they will also have higher dates. We have their basic salary. We have wardrobe allowance. We have medical allowance. We have transportation allowance. Then we have gross benefits. We have annual salary. We have tax. We have annual 80% loan. We have also, I think, monthly repay 6.6% loan. Then we have the gross liability, and then we have the tax. I think this one should be okay. Tax plus monthly repay 6.6%. And then the last feature here is net salary. Okay. So now that we understand this data, let's quickly look at how we can use this data to build pivot reports. So I want us to know that practically we can define pivot table as a report. So which means that we are going to model reports, and each of these reports constitutes the insights we must have draw or derive from the given data set. Right? So we should see pivot table as a reporter. Now, the first thing we need to know is how do we prepare the data in order to match with the right format for applying the pivot table. Now, it is recommended that any data set you want to analyze with the pivot table, you should first of all format that data as table. The reason is that it enhances the updation. That is, if by tomorrow at the end of your analysis, this particular sheet receive new entries, so it will now be able to update your report automatically when the data is in form of table instead of having it the way it is. But that is not to say that if you do not format a table, it will not work. So just take note of that. It's just an advice just to enhance pivot word record updation. That is why professionally we advise to always format our data as table. So I'm going to show us how we can format our data as tables. So tables are predefined styles, predefined styles that when you apply any of them on your data set, it has a way of restyling your data. So there are some functions that are already incorporated with that format, which you are inheriting automatically, that will make it to be able to update automatically as well. So to format the data as table, the first step is to select the entire data frame. And to do that, you simply select the first value and including the headers. Now select the first heading in your data set, hold down the control and the shift button on your keyboard, then press the right arrow key that will select the entire data horizontally. Then while you are still holding down the control and the shift, you press down the down arrow button and that will select the entire data vertically. Now, at the moment, this is where the last entry stops. But any other record that will come in after or beyond this selection will also be captured automatically just because we are formatting with table. That is actually the essence of formatting as table. So once you have highlighted the entire data, now you go to your home tab, go to your home tab, go to home tab. Then from home tab, you will see format as table. So all these are presets. They are templates. So you just have to choose. Well, I prefer choosing from a particular category, which is, I think, is the light section or the medium section. So let me choose the one that will give me both vertical and horizontal grid lines. So once you select any of the preset table, then a dialog box like this will be prompted. So the essence of the dialog box is to tell you the range, the boundary, it kind of notifying you that, okay, between here to this is the area I want to format as table. So if you check very well, I think I've once mentioned that when you see a dollar sign attached to a cell argument, like we have $A, $1 to $U to $151. So it means that what your selection is absolute, it's not dynamic, it's fixed. That is the meaning because of the presence of the dollar sign. Now, it defines the range, like I said, which means that we have total 150 record highlighted. That is what this is indicating. Now, what about this section that says my table has header? Now, my table has header. We allow a cell not to add its own header. It will allow a cell to maintain the header that came with the data. For example, we have serial number here, we have employee's name, we have employee's ID. So if I uncheck this, what I'm indirectly telling Excel is that convert this header to what the first record and give me another column at the top. And that is not what we want. So we just have to tell Excel that our data set has what headers already. So do not bother. So I'll click. So once I click, you can see that the appearance of my data set has changed. Now, let's assume that I'm not even interested in proceeding to pivot table. The major reason why I could just format my record as table because I want to automatically access the filter command. So you can see that anytime you format your data as table, automatically you have the filter command. So I can come here and say, okay, I want to see only what record from Avia. And then once I click, you see that what these are the only records from Avia. So I can come back here, and this is where I implemented the last operation. So I can come back here and return everything and say, okay, I want to look at record from Abuja. So I will just pick. I can say, okay, I want to take two at once. I want to look at record from Abuja and Akwa Ibom. Once I click OK, so these are the only records. So there are a lot of analysis answer or questions you can answer by just performing this filtering. Okay, so we may want to find out whether a particular transaction exists, so we can use this filter. So I'm just showing us that even outside formatting it because of pivot table, you can deliberately format your data as tables just for you to be able to access this filtering command. Right? I hope we are following. Please let me get a response at least for one person.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. All right. Thank you. All right. So so now that we have formatted our data as table, now we can now proceed to the main function, which is pivot table that we are bringing in. Now, I don't need to highlight the entire data. All I need is just to make sure that my selection is within the area of my data frame. I mean, you shouldn't come here and do something like this. This is not where your set pointer should be. It should be within the data anywhere. Just make sure that your set pointer is within the data set. Now, there are two ways we can actually implement pivot tables. If you are writing, you write methods of modeling reports with pivot table. Methods of modeling reports with pivot table. So what we want to learn now is it falls under what we call data modeling. So when you hear this term in data analytics, somebody can ask you during an interview, can you model reports with Excel? Yes. With what function? I can model a report with or model data with pivot table. So model are like structures which are used to display or present insight derived from a given data set. So there are two ways we can apply pivot table. The first method is where you manually generate the pivot reports using the headers in the data set you are given. But before that, we need to identify the question. That is where the whole thing starts from. The pivot table is there to help you, but you need to know the question you want to answer with the pivot table. That is where the technicality comes in. Different people can see pivot table from different angles, depending on how strong the question they want to answer with the pivot table is. So that is why I told us from the one that one of the skills you must develop as a data analyst is question drafting skill. It's very important. Question drafting skill. Every data or any data analyst that cannot look at a given data and be able to, draft question, that person is already failing. Okay, so now I want us to, that is why I walk us through the data set, because until you understand the data, you cannot draft analysis question. So now that I assume that we all understand the data, now I want us to write down this question. I'm going to answer them swiftly with the pivot table. All right, I hope you can still hear me. Please, can somebody confirm that before I proceed? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, like I was saying, the first question.
Yeah.
So the first question I want us to answer together is analyze the total sum of basic salary. Analyze the summation of basic salary per department. Analyze. So you can be writing down this question because you are still going to take them as an assignment. Analyze total basic salary per department. So that is the first question that I'm going to answer with the pivot table. My second question will be summarize or analyze the total number of employees per the same department. So this question uh is going to take us to counting. The other one is sum. Then I just want to answer three questions. First, the second question is analyze the total average of basic salary per the same, okay, basic salary per status. So let's say I want to start by answering these three analysis questions with the pivot table. So the first step, now don't forget that our objective is for us to create an interactive and dynamic data analysis dashboard. Because when we talk about dashboard is like using a single interface to present your multiple findings. And these findings are connected. One can communicate with the other. That is what makes it interactive. Dynamic means that what the values within this report can change per time depending on how you regulate it. So in other words, we are implementing the pivot table. At the same time, we are creating analysis dashboard. So for that reason, our insights, all the insights we are going to draw from this data are expected to be displayed in a different sheet, just like I've told us before. So now, starting with the first method, I'll select the entire data sets. Like I told us before, just highlight the entire data set you want to generate pivot report from. And then you go to Insert tab. You go to Insert tab. So from Insert tab, you will see pivot table and you also see what? Recommended pivot table. I'm going to use both of them as I develop the dashboard. So I'm starting with this. So I'll click here. So this one is referred to as the manual pivot report generation. Why this one is leveraging on some templates or the self-generated reports by the command itself as suggestion that you can either decline or absorb. So let me start from here because once you understand the logic behind this one is very easy to understand. So once I click on it, the cell is going to prompt you a dialog box like this. Now from this dialog box, we have to set the parameter correctly if we want to get expected results. So the first thing is what? The table slash the range. So I'm not going to change here because this is actually telling me that the name of the data I want to use for creating the pivot report is table. Now, this is where I need to know what I'm doing. Choose where you want the pivot table to be placed. I just advise us now that professionally, our pivot report or the dashboard should be separated from the data itself. So for that reason, I will stay on what? New worksheet so that it will create the report in a new sheet. But if I want the report and the data set to be in the same uh, workbook or sheet, I'll click here. And then once you click here, then you have to specify the particular section within the sheet where the report should be created. Of course, the report cannot be created on where you have value. So in that case, you will have to shift away. So probably you will just leave like, let's say, leave this column and this column just to separate the data set from the report you want to generate. Now, like I told us, each of the report, they are the insights that you have analyzed from your data. And then at the end of the day, you look at those reports one after the other and sit down, study those reports in order to generate your observations and your recommendation where necessary. So I want to go with the best practice. The best practice is not for you, it's for you to have your reports separated from the data set. So in that case, I will just go with this. I'll just go with it. But just for us to understand it in case you are compelled to do so. So let's say I want it here. So I'll click here. So which means that what all my reports will commence from here and then I'll click OK. So you can see that a report, a pivot report has been generated. But right now is empty. Is empty. Now, for you to generate insight with the reporter, you need to add data. And adding the data will now lead to us understanding this particular panel. So we refer to this as pivot table panel. Pivot table panel. So the pivot table panel is divided into four sections. The first one is filter. The second one is columns. The third one is values. And the fourth one is what? Row. So it is the way you manipulate your headers in or within this different panel is what determines the quality of reports that you end up generating. So this is where the technicality is. So let me just break it down. So I'm going to be citing that question because that is what will guide you to know, okay, what are the variables that are involved in that question. The question says we should summarize basic salary per department. So which means that what department value are needed and basic salary values are needed. So it is now left for you to now check which one is depending on the other. So you need to know your dependent variable and independent variable so that you know how to allocate them within the panel. For now, until you generate a report, you have no business with filter. So just take your mind off from the filter for now. So your attention should be paid on what? Columns, values, and row. Now, going back to the question, between the department and the basic salary, which of the header I am to allocate to the column, allocate to the row, and allocate to the value? That is where the technicality is. Now, this is how you sort it out. The column and the rows, they are for analyzing strings. What do I mean by string? That is text-based data type. Why this is for analyzing only integer or number. So which means that what our department, remember the question, we are summarizing basic salary per each department. So I will look for department header here. If I drag this department and add it on that column, it will generate a horizontal report. So you can see the report I have here now is a horizontal one. Now, what pivot table did is what you did the other time when we were using a sum if, where you have to copy the entire column and remove duplicates. So pivot table has automatically what deleted duplicate and gives you only what the unique value under that column that you added to what to the column section. Now I am having horizontal arrangement of my column because I assign it to column. Now if I take it from column and put it here, then I will not have them listed what vertically. So most reports goes with this vertical listing of your unique variable. Now, the question says that we are summarizing total profit per this what listed unique what department. So it means that, and that one is number. So we have to assign basic salary to number section, and it will automatically what give us the summation. So what you have answered now is what you will have done what sum if. You will now go there and highlight the range and then all those stuff we're doing. So you can see how simple a pivot table is able to what to give us the summary of this large data set. But now that is not all. You need to also okay, this is the department and this is the total. So if I want to edit this label, I can do that. So I will just click on that label and retype it. So what is it saying? We cannot. Okay, so since this is not permitting us, uh, let me just explain what to do here, the filter. Now this filter, that's why I told us that you must have a report before you involve the filter. Now, this particular report is reporting at the moment the total summary of basic salary per each of the unique word department. What about if I want to view only a summary of the basic salary for a particular gender? Let's say, okay, give me this same analysis, but summarize for only male. That is, this value right now constitutes of what male employees and what female what employee. The same thing to this value, the same thing to this value. But what the company wants you to do is that instead of giving the summary for the two gender, give for one. That is where you bring in filter. So how are you going to do that? You now come here to your data. This is where that particular information are tracked. Says so you add that cells to the filter to watch that report. Once I drop it here, you will see that what it will generate another. We are supposed to have the filter. Let me see. We are supposed to have the filter. So we are supposed to have the filter here so that once we select it, okay. So let me see how it will work with. I want to project the report with the external. Remember, I wanted to show us how you can have the report and the data in the same sheet. But like I said, the best practice is not for you to have both the pivot report and the data in the same sheet. So let's quickly do the writing. So I'm going back to the insert, so this second time now. Then I'm selecting this, and then I am selecting new worksheet. Then I click OK. Then I have my pivot report here. So just like we did right now, we assign department to, we just click on it. It knows where to add it. You now click on the basic salary. Okay, now we have the filter here. So let's see let me add the filter here. The filter, I'll drag it and put it here. Perfect. So you can see the confusion was because we were adding the report in the same sheet with our data. Now you have the filter criteria captured here. So which means that right now is on all. So if I click here, I will see the two what variable there. So if I select this now and I click OK, you see that the reports have changed. So what you have right now is the summary of basic salary per department for only female. Now, as a data analyst, after you have filtered like this, you observe. So you take note of the value you are getting per the department. Now, if you go back there now and say, okay, click on all to return everything and go back to filter by male, and then you see that what one of them will definitely what do better than the other. So you go to where you are compiling your reports. So you should be able, for example, now let's just take one. Let's take one. Let's say audit. Look at the value we have here now. So if I filter female, you can see that what is lower than what we have here. What we have there, for which means that what the male the male has more basic salary than the female. So if you go and do your counting analysis, you find out that you have more male than what female. That is why the total profits, sorry, total basic salary is less than the one of what a male. So I'll give us 5 minutes. We all have this particular data to try something like this. At least just try and create this report. Let me return everything. So you can start now. 5 minutes to do that.
I don't think I have this data.
Okay, so let me also send it to you because I uploaded it to the group. Let me send it to you now. You get it now. So the rest start. Okay, so let's proceed. So I just wanted us to understand the basics. That is the logic. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to undo everything and then start properly. Now that we understand how you can generate pivot reports, let us look at building a dashboard. Now, when you are creating dashboards, you are expected to start with what we call card reports. Card reports. Card reports are single metric value. For example, the kind of question that will lead to card report is somebody asking you what is the total basic salary. You are not sorry about that. Can you hear me now, please? Can you hear me? Let me confirm if you can hear me before I proceed. Please, can anybody hear me? Thank you. If you cannot hear me, let's see if I can. Hello, can anybody hear me? Not yet.